Hi, this is Sam Lagana with the Los Angeles Rams. Whose house? You're listening to the Los Angeles Rams UK podcast. Undenied worldwide. The Los Angeles Rams. It doesn't get any better than this. Let's go Rams!
Fires to the end zone, McConkey, touchdown. One play, 6 more points for Georgia.
And down goes Centeo. Nick Hampton and Dexter Lawson get to it. Go for nearly an 80-yard punt.
Family to his right, throws back over the middle, and it's intercepted. A diving interception by Jason Taylor II.
Good evening, welcome to another episode of the LA Rams UK podcast, episode 94. The pick is in. I'm joined as always is with me is Andy. Andy, how's it going, mate?
I'm great, thanks, mate. How are you?
I'm not bad, mate. Not bad. Before we're just going to dive into it a bit of depth, but initial thoughts on how the draft went for you?
Yeah, to be honest, it was a surprising draft because we never went really for that flashy player until, later in the rounds. We very much stuck to seemed to be, defensive line, offensive line, and we went for sort of to build up the core rather than go for this big splashy, I think we all kind of had this feeling it'd be like a running back or a wide receiver in the second round. And, we basically, until the 5th or 6th round, stuck to, basically improving the line, which is where we think we all wanted it. So overall, maybe 1 or 2 picks had have personally changed differently, but I think overall the whole of players that we got was good. And, we navigated the board as well and managed to pick up an extra 3 picks to, help fill up the squad a little bit.
Yep, it was certainly an interesting draft in that we didn't seem to make us need to pick. From my perspective, that's the big thing I took out of it. First of all, to ask, did you, how much of the draft did you watch live?
I pretty much watched all of it, mate. I watched.
Dedicated.
Yeah, night 1, night 2, and then for the day 3, I just sort of had it on in the background while I was doing other stuff, but sort of was keeping track of when we were picking to sort of focus on it.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't personally watch any of day 1, mostly because it didn't really apply to us. So I thought I'll just catch up and not staying up late. I value sleep, as you know. So I was up already for the day 2 because I was on the Roll the Lines podcast, appearing to give our it was still a preview, I guess, on the draft whilst they were all talking about who'd been getting picked and whatnot. So I was up, so I did stay to watch our second round pick. And it was one of the ones my wife was still up at the time, and I did say to her, I guarantee you this pick is right at the last minute. We're going to end up trading this, and this is going to be a waste of time, me sitting up here now. But it was good to see we made that pick. And I did, like yourself, I had day 3 on in the background and was kind of watching the picks. Actually, I did 8 night with the wife and had like my phone kind of placed up. I wasn't watching it live, but I was like sitting just refreshing my feed every time she was checking our messages and whatnot, seeing who we were picking and trying to posting the socials what guys were picking, and I got a bit of grief off of. I think it was one of the other fan groups in the UK saying that this, obviously, I've got my priorities totally wrong if I'm planning date nights when it's the NFL draft. But
maybe.
So that's it. So tonight, folks, we're here to essentially go over the Rams draft. Who we picked, when we picked them. Also, as you know, with the Rams, we like an undrafted free agent. So to look at some of the guys just so quickly were brought in because going into the draft, the roster sat at 45. It's now looking a bit more healthier thanks to the amount of guys we did draft. We did start off with 11 picks. We definitely came out with a lot more than that. And on the whole, a lot of people, commentators, are saying that the Rams had a pretty decent draft. So let's kind of drill down what happened. So, as you know, the Rams had this 36th pick in the second round, and I'll say it's a surprise because we actually drafted a position we really needed. We decided to go with offensive guard Steve Avila. Andy, initial thoughts on Avila coming in to our offensive line?
Yeah, it's a bit of a change from usual. We tend to go for smaller guys because of the scheme we run, but it's nice for us to see, go with a big guy, who's going to be bigger, stronger, and maybe help a little bit. For me, he's still got a bit of development work to do. His pass protection is a lot better than his run protection, but I will say out of the two, it's easier to coach up the run game than it is for a passing game. So, I do like the pick. Personally, I'd have picked another player myself because he was still there. But, I'm not going to knock the pick. I do like, the fact that we did go for the offensive line. We've picked the guy up. And, I think he's basically going to be a day one starter for us and a massive improvement on the line straight away. Whichever, and he has that flexibility. He can play guard, center, and he's even got experience out at tackle. So again, it's a nice guy that's got that flexibility, so that we do have that capability. If they decide, we'll maybe trial him at tackle and see how he does. Give him that chance. If not, he can knock back inside, or if we start taking injuries at positions, we can. If he has that flexibility, we can knock him about maybe where we need to. Well, I think day one, he's going to be either our starting left or right guard, myself personally, barring obviously what happens with, injury-wise, in pre-season.
Yeah, it definitely does seem to be a day one starter, which, to be honest, I think we did say with that second round pick, that's what we wanted. We wanted someone who's going to come in and from day one, be on whatever position. I'm like I said, I'm happy that it's the offensive line. And as you said, that Avila, he's listed as a guard, but he can also play tackle. And one thing we did say week before last, when we were talking about guys in a mock draft, is that having, especially with offensive line, I guess, having guys with a bit of flexibility that they can shift from guard to tackle or to centre or whatnot would be not critical, but it would be a major plus for us, especially when you look at last year with the number of injuries we sustained in that offensive line. And just looking at some of the highlights I've seen on him, he looks very strong on the line. There's a few, I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but there was quite a few guys in the Senior Bowl, like edge rushers and linebackers, who were projected to go quite high in the draft. I think there was a few ones that actually went above him in the draft, but like I said, I can't remember names off the top of my head, that he was comfortably holding off. So it's one of those ones that it looks like we've got a guy who we potentially could mould here into a very good offensive lineman.
Yeah, very much so. I do think, like I say, the bits he needs to brush on, as I say, in the run game is the easier of the two. I think, pass protection wise, day one for, Stafford is going to like having him there simply because he's going to help keep him upright a little bit better than what we've previously had there, and he has that bulk and size, as we say, that, is going to play. He's not going to be easily bullied off the ball like we've previously had with some of our guards. And to be honest, I do agree with Matt Warren there that, to me, he could potentially be Saffold 2.0.
Yep, it could be. So after the 36th pick in the draft, we had the 69th pick, but the Rams made a trade with the Texans. We traded back in the third and swapped a 6 for a 5th. The Texans traded picks 73 and 161 for picks 69 and 191. Then we had another trade come in. We traded back in the third and gained the 4th round pick. And that 4th round pick, as we come on to it, turns out to be a key pick because it was a pick the back office really wanted the game, because we didn't have a 4th round pick, and it was a major plus for them to trade there. So we traded with the Giants picks 89 and 128 for pick 73. 77. And with that pick, we took edge rusher Byron Young. Edge rusher's the second pick, Andy. Was that a position that you were quite happy to see us take our first 3rd round pick with?
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely, as we said, a couple of weeks ago, they were sort of the 2 positions we need. And, I think if you looked at every analyst, they said the same thing. The Rams need to get some help on the edge, and up front on the interior offensive, the line. And we basically, with our first 2 picks, did that, and I know some people are knocking him because, he's going to be 25. He's a bit older of a prospect and stuff. But when you listen to his story, the adversity he went through, the fact that at one point the guy was, basically out of college football and was an assistant manager at a convenience store, that drive, that will and that passion, he's been through that adversity of, never getting picked up in college, having to work his way and then, walking into a team like Tennessee, which aren't a bad side. They're not your Alabamas or your Ohio States, but they are still, a good college football team, and he's got the starting job. And he's, I think that adversity that he's faced is going to mold him as a player. And I think it's a theme of this draft. We have drafted a few older players, but we've, a lot of the players we have drafted have been, team captains or have gone through situations, So I think the Rams are looking at the locker room and that character building as well. But for me, the age doesn't worry me so much. I did say this a few weeks ago. Before the draft, people were saying about players they're older. That I think is going to be becoming a more common because of this Neal deal now in college, where college players are going to get paid. The law of the NFL draft all of a sudden may not be so big because they're already getting cash before they even get to the NFL, so they can allow them to finish their college careers. So it may be that in the future we are going to start seeing more and more players of older age than we used to coming out because they're getting the cash already and they can get their education at the same time.
Well, that's it. And education is more important, I guess. So yeah, like you said, I'm not really bothered about the age of like some of these guys, like 24, 25 or whatever. Age is but a number. Like, if anything, these guys are kind of, like you said, because they've been able to have a full college career, be able to finish their degrees and whatnot, they're more experienced, they're less green, I guess. They've got more time to develop and more time for, for teams to essentially scout them, I guess, to really kind of drill down, their strengths and weaknesses. So it doesn't bother me as much. But just on the convenience store side, when was the last time you heard about a Rams player with convenience stores?
Yeah, exactly. The comparison that has come through. Could he be the next? But I would say if he has a career like Warner, happy days. But again, for most of our D-line guys that have come in, he's got the perfect player to watch and learn from in Aaron Donald. Pick that guy's brain. The guy, he's an explosive player. He already has that juice and that bend that you want off the edge. And with someone like AD sitting down and coaching these guys up, I can see, he may never be, a 20 sack a season sort of player, but he's going to be, I think, a lot more consistent. And also, he's good against the run as well. So he's going to be able to step in and against the run and help shut down the run, which is, something we have been good at. And I think the team does want to keep good at, is to stop teams from being able to run us against us.
Yep.
Apart from obviously the Niners, which we never seem to be able to stop no matter what they do.
No.
Yeah.
No, but well, I suppose the next pick we had in the draft, and it was the first pick we got from the Giants trade I just mentioned, pick number 89, defensive end Kobe Turner. Now here's a man who could potentially help us stop the run. So just mentioned about Aaron Donald. Here's another man that on the defensive line could possibly learn from him. A lot's been said about Turner as a potential steal in this draft. Is this a guy that how far off being a starter do you think is for us? Do you think he's a day one starter? Do you think he's a mid-season starter? Do you think it's one of the ones we'll see him kind of maybe rotate in and it'll be the following season?
I don't know, because obviously it's, again, we're lacking depth behind there. Outside of Aaron Donald, we've got Bobby Brown, who has got to step up big this year and mature. But we're missing that guy alongside what would have been the Ashawn Robinson role. So I could
Yep.
potentially see him maybe starting straight away in that role, as sort of the run block. We get a bit of pass rush out of him as well, because he does have some pass rush moves.
Yeah.
To thing, but I think it all depends on what the Rams want to do with him. He's, as people have said, he's in that tweener role where he's not quite big enough to be a nose tackle, but he's too big to be an edge player. So, it depends what the Rams do. The Rams may want him to bulk up, an extra 10, 15 pounds to become that more prototypical nose tackle size, or they may be happy to let him, run riot as he is now, and let's just see what he can do straight away on, day one. And, I think this season is going to be the sort of season where these players that we normally would expect to, maybe sit out a year or two to develop, which is what we've traditionally done, because of the lack of depth and the lack of big name starters. They're going to maybe be frustrating at the beginning to say, right, you know what, you're just going to have to get on. And this will basically be almost like a learning year for them.
You don't have to learn on the job. Yeah, that, I touched upon at the start. Going into the draft, we only had like 44, 45 guys in the roster. So every single one of these guys that are being picked from the draft are very likely to be seeing a decent number of snaps this season. Let's put it that way. Maybe not so much the next guy we'll come on to talk to about in a second, but in general, I think a lot of these guys, they're coming in and they are to provide depth, but they are going to be expected to step up and play.
Yeah. The one thing I will say with the Kobe Turner pick, it was one of those that I was kind of like, there was another player up there who was a similar guy who I thought maybe would have been a better, which would have been Adebawore. So when the pick first got made, I was kind of like, hang on, that guy's sitting there. He's already been compared to, Aaron Donald 2.0, if you like, coming out of college. If we wanted that tweener guy, I personally felt he would have been the best pick. But after seeing Kobe Turner's interview with the Rams, he sort of turned my head, and I was like, actually, I can see now maybe why the Rams fell in love with him, because he does come across as a smart guy. And I've learned a bit more, the fact that his nickname is the Conductor. He can read sheet music. He uses his ability of reading sheet music. He uses that and to translate to the football field and how he plays and how he sees things. And it's kind of, the more I saw his interviews and stuff, the more I was like, actually, you know what? Maybe the Rams did make the right choice here with this guy, But, I wasn't saying when he was picked, I was unhappy with it. I was just sort of questioning that there was maybe better players available. But,
you understand the reason behind the pick, even if you felt that there was a better talent available.
Yeah. Seeing the fact that our D-line coach was, seems to be absolutely ecstatic over the fact of getting them. I'm kind of like, okay, I trust these guys that they know what they're doing a bit more than I do. So, let's see what the guy can do. But, I think, if he puts his mind down and his head in, I think he could be someone who, in a few years' time, I'm not going to say an Aaron Donald replacement, in terms of, but I think he could be the guy who would take over that role on the defense as that smaller bodied interior pass rusher for us when AD obviously does decide to potentially kick up the boots. And again, as we've said, who better to learn off than the GOAT on the defensive line?
Well, that's it. Just very quickly on there, Aaron Donald did confirm earlier this evening that he did not for 1 second consider retiring during the season, during his injury and during the off season. He's just, that came out tonight that Aaron Donald has cleared up to say, no, I was never thinking about, I'm 100%, I'm good to go for next year, which is great to hear. But yeah, as you're saying, Kobe Turner can learn a lot off him, and that was one of my kind of thing. He's obviously, no one's going to be Aaron Donald, but you could be, up there with him. You could be as good, but not better, obviously not better than him. You can, because there's so much that he could teach you on the defense. And like you were saying about the whole conductor thing, a few things I've seen when I was reading, just kind of like quick reports about some of our draft picks in general. One thing that kept popping out is, especially in defense, I have to say, a lot of these guys that coming in seem to be guys that are willing to step up and lead and be heard and be vocal. And that's something that last year we felt was lacking leadership. And I mean, Wagner did great in that role, but it was just him. Whereas it looks like we're potentially adding a few guys here in defence that will be willing to essentially open their mouth and
Yeah.
step up. And Turner was one that I did see that from. So
Yeah, again, I think Turner was one of them who was a team captain. So,
Yeah.
I think, this is a common trend with the team. And I think that's what they are looking at, as you say, is players who can come in that locker room and even from day one be like, okay, you know what? I'll take the lead, I'll take the role, and I'll be that player that, everyone else, looks up to,
yeah.
For the drive and the energy.
Yep. So following that, we had our second pick from the Giants trade, and that was the 4th round pick that we'd acquired, pick number 128. So in our mock draft, I mentioned this guy, and Andy talked me out of him. That was quarterback Stetson Bennett, who is a national champion and was never considered to be a guy that was going to go in the 1st round. Andy, Stetson Bennett, are you happy that he's a Ram, or are you feeling like there was maybe better quarterbacks available?
I still think there was. It's not so much there was better quarterbacks available. I just thought where we picked him, we could have waited for him. I don't think he was going to get drafted. There were still players on the board who I felt would potentially come in and be better day one starters for us that were still on the draft board. As I said before previously, there was my guy, Savosia Dennis, a linebacker, which was another position we really probably needed to draft, that was sitting there staring us in the face. So it was kind of, it was one of them players. I was like, we really maybe should have got him. There was Valami Fahoko, who's taken, the pick after him, another edge player that we could have brought in who I feel would have had the dynamism to come alongside next to him. There was players I felt around that, we could have took with this 4th round pick. And I still personally think he would have still been in there in the 5th and potentially even the 6th round, because I don't think, because of his character issues and everything else, I don't think teams were going to, draft him. And I think the Las Vegas bookies, I think he was basically a lock-in in the betting that basically he was going to be an undrafted player. He was never going to get picked up in the draft. So, and Las Vegas don't tend to really get that wrong very much. So the fact that Las Vegas, he was an odds-on favourite to basically go undrafted, you kind of like, maybe he could have been a later round pick and we could have got a bit more talent.
Yeah.
But, I think, I think Jake Hayner was, the guy maybe we wanted. And because he went the pick before us when the Saints traded up, we were kind of like, we panicked and we've taken him. But, I know everyone says, oh, he's a national championship winner, but, if you look at that Georgia defense and the players around him, you only had to be an average quarterback who would win with that team. I don't care not what you say. I think if John Wolford was on that team, he'd look like a, star bloody quarterback, because he's got the rings. But
just when you mention him, is Bennett an upgrade on Wolford?
I do think he's an upgrade on Wolford. I'm not going to argue that he's an upgrade over what we've had. It's just, like I say, I think character issues for me, a big glitzy town like LA, can he keep himself under control, due to his issues, maybe, like I said, maybe his issues have, he's made him mature a little bit more, but I think, it's not so much the player that I'm annoyed. It's just I do think there was more value to be had that we could have taken and then brought him in. But you know what? He's here now. Let's get behind the guy. Let's see what he can do. I think, I think his first challenge is obviously beating out Brett Rippon as QB2. And then if he can do that, then we'll see what happens as he goes forward. If nothing else, I think he's going to be a good guy for the scout team to play with, because he is reasonably athletic. He is mobile. So when we are going to come up against teams with a more mobile quarterback, that was scouting team, and he's going to step in straight away and, I think fill that role very well.
Yep. My feelings on it is he was one of the guys that I'd highlighted in a mock draft that I would potentially take. Also, you talked to me when we went with Aidan O'Connell instead. I don't think it's necessarily it was a panic pick from us. I think, like you said, Jake Hayner was the pick we wanted to make. The Saints traded up and took him because they must have got wind that that's who we were looking at. So I think the fourth round was going to be, when we traded there, I think the decision was made, it's a quarterback. And they maybe not got the first guy, but I don't think they've panicked. I think it's a case of, well, Bennett was the next guy on the list. So that's who we moved to. We're happy with this pick. We'll take it. We could take the risk of, like you said, he likely would have been there later, but is it worth taking that risk to then miss out when at that time all we had was Matthew Stafford as our only quarterback on the roster? Whereas now we've got Stafford, Bennett, Ripien, as you said, who's came in the 1 year deal, and we've got an undrafted free agent in Dresser Wynn. So we've now got an actual a QB room. The other thing is, coming from Georgia, is it one of those ones that Stafford's maybe had an ear and had a say in it as well? Because there was that picture, from after the national championship game of Stafford and Bennett there. That is it one of those ones Stafford's like, I like the look of this guy. I'd love him to come in here if we could get him. Who knows? But he's definitely an upgrade on Wolford, who I seen signed with the Bucks yesterday. He's an upgrade, I think, on Perkins. Watching his highlights, he's got a bit of mobility. He's not got an amazing arm, but he's got a decent enough arm.
Yeah,
and he's got an accurate arm for the kind of short to medium passes. So I think it's one of those ones. Last year, we obviously we had our backups basically playing as starters for a good bit of the season, and we talked at length about the quarterback situation with us. I think I feel more comfortable going into this season with the QB room now than I did last year. I'm not saying like Bennett's a decent quarterback. He's not a great quarterback, but I feel comfortable knowing now that we've got someone who, I mean, he's playing so fine. He's won, I guess, as I said about the championship game, it's a high pressure game, regardless of who you're playing. So it's a tribute for me, is what it is, that with the pressure that could be put on him, that he's got the capabilities of stepping up. I mean, there was other quarterbacks, they went earlier, I guess, that I would have taken over him, but he's not a quarterback and a pick that I would say that I was unhappy with. I was actually, when I said I was in date night with my season, I was at dinner when I seen it flash up, and the first thing I did think was, I wonder what Andy's got to say about this, because I know he said to me like the other night that no, I wouldn't take him. The guy's got too many problems off the field. But
yeah. One thing I will say about the guy, and I think this is why the Rams and McVay maybe have fell in love with him, is he ran a similar scheme at Georgia to what he'd be expected to run with the Rams. We do play a similar scheme.
Yeah.
So maybe the fact that he can step in that scheme, a lot of the playbook, by the way, he's going to look the same, is something that maybe McVay and co have looked at, and basically because it does seem from what the press releases and the interviews that McVay wanted Bennett. So maybe that's something he's looking at, is, well, he already knows basically the scheme. It's just the wordage, so he can pick it up straight away day one, and potentially he's not going to have to bed him in for a year or two if we do need that guy to step in for a few games for Stafford. He can function defense without or the offense without too many issues.
See, when you say that to me, that puts to me that he is going to be the backup to Stafford as opposed to Ripien. Because, like you said, with that kind of similarities in the system, in the playbook, albeit the terminology used, there's that there's that worry that week one Stafford takes a bad hit, concussed. We need Bennett to step up. He can step up because he knows the system. All he has to do is basically learn what the kind of the the wordage, I guess, and all that. So maybe that's a factor in it.
I think that's why we've signed Ripien as well, because Ripien ran a similar scheme in Denver as well. So I think they are looking at players who can run that sort of, have been in that scheme fit before, that they can at least, as I say, bar the wordage, can pick up the basic playbook and maybe not, just function the offense, rather than with Walford and Perkins, it was pretty much a case of everything had to be adjusted on the fly for their particular skill sets, because they weren't, although they may have been there for a few years, they weren't the same caliber of quarterback as these two guys could be. But I think Bennett's first task, as I say, is to beat out Brett Ripien as QB2. which
But
I don't think is a lock. I think people think it's going to be a lock. I don't think it's a lock at the moment. I think Bennett is going to have to come in and prove that he can beat him fair and square.
Yeah, Rippon doesn't matter how many games he's played in the NFL. He's played in the NFL.
Yeah.
So he's got that edge on him. So it'll be
that's
interesting
one
to
of the
see how the
things.
camps go.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those things that I think is going to make preseason a bit interesting. Is that
Mhm.
QB2 battle between them two? Because I think that is going to be it. I don't think our fourth guy at the moment is going to see much playing time. He might get 5 minutes at the end of a game, maybe. But it is going to be mainly them two battling it out for that QB2 spot, and it'll be an interesting battle just to see who can look the better of the two.
It will be. So moving on, so we went into the 5th round pick, number 161, and this came from the Texans trade. We took linebacker Nick Hampton. So we obviously lost Wagner from the linebacker core, Andy. Was this another key position for you to draft at this stage in, or do you feel like this could have waited and we could have maybe picked up a kind of target like a tight end or whatnot at this point, or someone in the secondary?
No, I do think this is a fairly decent pick again. It's a position we need, and I do believe, I'm not sure, but I think the Rams are actually now listing them as edge on the depth chart.
Yeah.
As more of that edge linebacker hybrid sort of role that we do like to play. So the guy could step in again day one and potentially, get that starting role because of who's basically behind him. But I do think for a 5th round, it was a good pick. To be honest, I did have sort of, and I did see a few guys, they do the mock draft analysts potentially had him as a 4th rounder. So, to pick him up in the 5th, I think is a little bit of a steal for us. I don't think many people were expecting them to still be sat there in the 5th round where we picked them. So yeah, I'm happy with that. We've picked the guy up, and that, again, he's another player that we can, maybe he'll be a day one starter. If nothing else, it's an improvement again on the special teams, which is again another area we needed to improve on. So this guy, if he doesn't get the starting job straight away, he's going to be a massive improvement on special teams. And again, he's got that drive and desire to, to battle for those jobs. And I think that's something we do need. And again, I believe he was a team captain as well.
Yep. He is listed on the projected kind of depth charts. He is listed as 2nd on his particular side of the linebacker behind. I would say it's Hoot again.
Yeah.
Him. You know what I'm talking about. I think he's listed behind Michael.
Yeah, Michael H.
Michael H, yes. I believe he's listed behind him. For me, like linebacker or edge, again, I guess he's down as an edge. It's another position that we did need to kind of strengthen a bit more and add more depth to. So I'm overly happy. I don't really have much to say from watching his highlights. The guy, he looked decent enough on the blitz to me. Just as it appears on screen there, he got quite a few kind of sacks, and it's shown in his highlights. Good strong tackler. So on the whole, I'm quite happy with bringing him in. So from there, we moved on to pick number. We've done another couple of trades actually at that point. We went with the Texans again. So we traded back in the 5th round and gained the Mr. Irrelevant pick in the draft from the Texans. So Texans traded 174 and 259 for a 167th pick. Then we've done another trade, this time with Tampa. So we traded back in the 5th again and gained the 7th. So with Tampa, they traded 175 and 252 for our 171st pick. So we eventually came back up at 174, which was from the second Texan trade, and took offensive tackle Warren McClendon Jr., another one from Georgia. So you've got Stetson Bennett there, and you've got one of the guys in front of him. Another offensive lineman, Andy. It was a key. It was, anywhere along the offensive line was a key position for the draft. What do you know of McClendon? And happy that we didn't lose sight of adding more depth to the offensive line.
Yeah, I like the McClendon pick, to be honest. I thought, if it wasn't for the fact that he'd been injured during the season, was carrying knocks, wasn't able to complete the Senior Bowl and the Combine, he was earlier on in the draft process, at the beginning of the draft year, he was going potentially, second round pick, basically. He's top of the second round. So the fact, unfortunately injuries had made him slide down, which could happen during the draft season, from the beginning of the year. But I'm really happy. I think potentially if he's fit and healthy, honestly, I think he could be our day one starting left tackle. I do see a lot of good traits out of the guy, and the only reason after his injuries he didn't get his starting job back was because basically they had a 5-star recruit that they brought in who was threatening to leave if he didn't start getting playing time. So basically
That's
they had
right. I
to,
did read that. Yeah.
yeah, it was a case of they either had to start him or they were going to lose him at the, he was going to transfer elsewhere. So they, you know, had to basically switch and match and play. But I do think, he has that versatility where he can step in for Havenstein on the right because that's where he's used to playing.
Yep.
But I do see potentially, like I say, if he's fit and healthy and has a good camp for us, that he could very well push Noteboom and Jackson as the day one starter even on the left.
Well, at present with it's Noteboom, Jackson, Havenstein, McClendon, and Arcuri. So he's behind. He's currently projecting behind Havenstein, but he's obviously because that's a rookie. But however, with the way things could go, like he could easily push into that starting position.
Yeah. I mean, there's no guarantee that Noteboom's going to be fit to start the season, and he's going to come back the same from his injury, his Achilles injury. So it could be. But I do think if he's given a chance, he could really be one of the steals of the draft. If he comes in, he's fit, he's healthy, he's ready to go. He has a good camp. He picks up the playbook and everything else. Tackles do tend to, struggle a little bit unless the Tristan Wirfs, they do struggle. But this is the perfect year maybe for the guy to step in, learn his position, so that day two you look at somebody who was drafted in the first round like Andrew Thomas. The first year of his career, everyone was right. He's wasted space. He's a write off. Now he's classed as one of the top 5 tackles in the league. I do think Warren McClendon has that capability if he puts his mind to it and his body is fit and healthy enough for it, that he could be, a good starting tackle in the league.
Yep, I think he's one of the guys I class as a steal, and I think it's like as you highlighted the kind of backstory with this 5-star recruit, basically throwing the toys out the pram, demanding to be started. I think it's that's we've obviously scouted him enough, and we've seen hold on here. This is a guy to keep an eye on. That's happened, and it's maybe taken the focus off of him because he's not had that kind of almost front and center role, I guess. And that's worked in our favour, and he's obviously dropped down the draft in the 5th round for us to pick him. Looking at his highlights, from one thing I did kind of pick up is that an edge rusher or whatever, or anyone coming at him, there was quite a few times in his highlights he seemed to just brush off defenders with quite a bit of ease. He looks particularly strong to hold his position, create time in the pocket for the quarterback, as well as directing, I guess, the defenders to create gaps and for the running back. So on the whole, I'm quite happy with this guy.
Yeah,
and for me, he's one guy that I feel like he is someone that we've taken him in the 5th round, but he feels like a guy that I feel like we've drafted him higher than he actually is. Do you know what I mean? Just because he went under the radar, and that's what I'm saying. I feel like he's a bit of a steal because he feels like when I keep having to remind myself, which it's the 5th round, we got him, not the 4th or the 3rd, because he feels like he would have been higher up there. So on the whole, I'm really happy.
Yeah, with this pick. One thing I will say about the guy as well is that Mr. number 3, the best edge in the draft, Will Anderson, when he played him twice, he basically made him look like a non-existent. He basically blocked him out the bloody game. Anderson
was one of the guys that appeared on the highlight package there that we just played. He's the guy in the Senior Bowl. If anybody's watched that, you can quickly rewind. It basically just like puts him in his arse in the end zone, like with absolute ease. And it was when I seen that and I'd seen the name, I thought, hold on, that guy went in the 1st round, and he's just totally just brushed them off. So on the whole, really happy with this pick. So we had the very next picks in the draft. And this came off of the Tampa trade, and we stuck with the offense this time. And it was projected in the kind of mock drafts the Rams were going to take a tight end potential in the second round, but no, we waited to pick number 175 as we took tight end Davis Allen. Andy, moving to the tight end, we've got Higbee in there. We have got Hopkins. Is that?
Yeah,
Yep, Hopkins,
Long.
and we've got Hunter Long, who we got as part of the Ramsey trade. So we've now got a fourth guy in there, Davis Allen. Happy we looked at the tight ends, or do you think we maybe should have looked in the backfield or in the slot?
No, I'm fairly happy that we got a tight end. I think we do need a tight end too, and potentially a replacement as well for Higbee. Guy's not getting any younger. He seems to be having more and more knocks as his career's going on. And I do think at the moment he would be a good number 2. He's got safe hands. I think read a stat on him. In the whole of his college career, he only had 2% of catches dropped, which for any player is bloody good to drop only 2% of your catches in the whole of your college career. And yeah, he's not a Kyle Pitts, dynamic runner or anything. He's not got massive, 4.4 speed or anything, but he's solid. He's dependable. He can block well. He's willing to engage with his blocks, which is obviously alongside Higbee on the other side, can also help the O-line a little bit, So I'm happy we picked him up, to be honest. I do think, he's potentially our number 2 starting tight end this year, unless Hunter Long comes in and surprises us, or Hopkins really does step up. I do think he's potentially our number 2 straight away, and would be at the moment an improvement over what I think we've got in the room. Obviously, preseason dependent.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree. Not really much else I can say other than that. Just that about Hunter Long. Hunter Long's not been given a number. Put it that way. Whereas Davis Allen has got a number. Make of that what you will. But I do think he is going to come in as tight end number 2 here behind Higbee. We've gone on looking at his highlights. Guy looked like a decent reach. Like you said, 2% his catches dropped. Doesn't matter what position you're kind of playing. That's great, regardless out there in the offense. Yeah, just like I said, there's not really much else. You said it all, really, Andy. Decent pick. We're getting, for us, this is very late for us to be not picking, someone on offense, that can either run or catch the ball. So I was quite surprised that we got this far, and surprised that we didn't pick a running back or a wide receiver by this point, because normally that's what we've done well. But we're normally on to our second wide receiver or our second running back in the draft. So again, continuing what not really a trend, I guess, but continuing what felt like a sensible draft from us. So after Davis Allen, we would only have to wait another couple of picks to 177, where we took wide receiver Puka Nakua. I think I've got his name right there. Andy, going to the wide receiver room to add a bit more depth. We've got Cup, Skowronek, Atwell, Trammell in there. Decent addition, to go with another wide receiver to that room.
Yeah. I think he's a good wide receiver. He's basically, I think he's kind of, people are hoping he's going to be what, our Bobby Tree's replacements, and kind of what people were expecting, Allen Robinson to be,
Yeah.
Again, he's another one of those guys that his stock fell due to injuries. Throughout the season, he missed his first game of the season with an injury, and then came back for a couple of games and was in and out the squad with, not major injuries, but just niggly little injuries throughout the year, hamstrings, ankles, stuff like that. Nothing major, and yeah, he's not a blazing 4.3 sort of guy, but he's basically, if you look at his combine statistics and you look at Bobby Tree's, they're basically they're very, very similar.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's going to be Bobby Tree straight away, but he is that sort of player that, could come in and be that replacement, that
Yeah.
big-bodied possession guy who's good. Yeah, I will say one thing I did like about Nick Howe is he can his routes are very crisp and clear, and his breakaway, his release is really good. And also, he's good at things like, the jet screens, the bubble screens, things like that, which will open that sort of end to the game again. I think that's why a lot of people are saying, they're giving him the Bobby Trees comparisons because of he's a very similar style player. So, I'm really happy with the pick, and I think, I said pre-draft, I think people were looking at our wide receiver room and kind of, oh, it's panic, and everyone was mocking, oh, the Rams need a wide receiver in the second round. And I was saying, I don't think our room is as bad as people make it out to be.
No.
I think, with the four that we have of, Cup, Jefferson, Atwell, Skoranek, I think it was a serviceable one, back room. It's not going to maybe not the most flashiest, but I do think it was still serviceable. And I think adding Naku is, it just adds to that and maybe gives us a little bit of, bit more balance to the room. And again, potentially one of those guys, if he comes in, has a good camp and stays fit and healthy, could be seeing, snaps day one of the season, potentially.
Yep. For the whole Bobby Trees comparison, I think like what you're saying is that it highlights the type of receiver he is, and let's not beat around the bush here. We miss Bobby Trees. We were all gutted to see him, move on. It doesn't matter in terms of like his injury statuses or whatnot, his health or whatever. Like he was a wide receiver we absolutely loved on our roster, and a lot of people were kind of like upset that he left. So I think it's good that comparison made, because it's letting us see that we potentially got that kind of receiver coming back into a roster. And like you're saying about the jet sweeps and whatnot, for me, that could be a good thing, because I think in this off season they were highlighting about bringing another wide receiver in, hopefully someone a bit more talent, to try and lighten Cup's load, because too much is getting put on Cooper Kupp, and we really need we basically need Bobby Trees version 2. Not saying that this guy is going to be that is going to be version 2 Bobby Trees, but there's potential there for him to be like that kind of receiver. And I think we're having someone like that out there. Woods and Kupp were great together. They complemented each other. But they were different receivers in the same respect. And I think we're missing we're missing a 1-2. Jefferson's. I like Van Jefferson. I really like Skoranek. Over last season, I've really kind of turned my kind of opinion on him. I really like Benny Sko, but you look at other teams and they go about, oh, is this the best wide receiver duo in the league and whatnot? And it's like, well, right, if you who is our duo that you could say, well, that's our duo, because obviously it's King Kupp, but to say Jefferson, you're like, well, Jefferson missed half the season, injured. Then you go with Skoranek, no, because Skoranek was playing fullback, he was playing tight end at one point, playing in the slot, so he's that's not really a duo. So perhaps they're going back to what they had with a wide receiver like Woods, and this obviously what they must see in this guy. And just, I guess we'll see what happens. Like you say, if he has a good camp, there's nothing to say this guy can't be a day one starter. He could be there as wide receiver 3 or 4.
Again, another thing I will say about him is a bit like Bobby Trees as well. He's a willing, engaging blocker. He's willing to get in dirty and do some of that blocking stuff that we do like our wide receivers to do. To help the run game. So, like I say, I think he's a good pickup for us. And does have potential to potentially push for that. Again, like you said, good camp, good preseason. Maybe has that potential to push it up the depth chart.
Yep. So as we moved into the 6th round with the 182nd pick, but I guess this spell was like great for us, because you're talking over the space of 15 picks. The Rams had 5 picks. So it was obviously, this was like Rams hour, I guess. We had Tre'Vius Hodges Tomlinson. Now that last part of the surname may interest you, because he is related to one LaDainian Tomlinson, the former running back for the San Diego Chargers before they became the Tenants. Finally going to the secondary, Andy. Were you surprised that we waited as long to go to the secondary, given how weak we are there, or is it a case of it's hard to justify having taken in the secondary earlier with some of the picks that we've spoke about that we were happy with?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised, to be honest. My initial thoughts was it was potentially going to be a fourth round pickup, but maybe what the Rams, who they liked on the boards, had gone, or they felt like they could go later. For me, I think they look at Hodges Tomlinson and they're kind of looking at a potential Darius Williams style guy, not a big player, not anything, but has the can do that role, and I think he can certainly go into the slot straight away, and with his size and help. But it wouldn't surprise me, much like we did with Williams, that potentially we could be saying, actually, you know what, you can go on the outside. We'll put you up against outside wide receivers, and you may occasionally get torched over the top, but you may also come down with your athleticism and everything, can come out with a few picks. He's aggressive, he's a willing tackler, he's willing to get his nose in as well. So, I think overall, he's a decent pick. And again, as I keep saying over and over again, if he has a good camp and everything else, potentially, another day one starter for us, because, that is one area that we are thin at. And I do personally, I would not be surprised if over the next few weeks, we maybe do pick up one or two, veteran deal guys that are still on free agency, if nothing else, to maybe compete at, the main camp, to sort of see what we can get, because I do think we do need to still put some depth in there that, as much as I do like Durant and stuff, you rely on a lot of players to step up big that, and it's not always going to be easy for them. Without Ramsey there to help you, it's kind of, a massive step up and challenge.
Yeah, that is a bit of a challenge for any of the guys in the secondary, because you've not got that leading in Jalen Ramsey now there. So, I mean, it's really sink or swim for every single one of them, I'd say. In the case of Hodges Tomlinson, looking at his highlights, the guy looks absolutely solid. I think the guy's got potential. I think he's projecting to be kind of more of a nickelback, and he's projecting in the depth chart behind Durant. But I mean, I'm saying projecting to be behind Durant. I think he's probably more likely to be ahead of Durant with a good camp. So there's a lot of potential with how weak that secondary is there, in the cornerback kind of nickelback kind of positions. When I say weak, I mean, I don't mean in terms of depth and in terms of numbers of guys we've got, because we've got about 8 or 9 guys in those positions. It's more a case of the ability. It's there for the taking for him to step up and, as you say, claim a starting position. There'll be outside as a cornerback, or as in this nickelback. But interesting to see where the kind of fits in. So rounding off the kind of the spell we had there with 15 picks, Ramsey, as I called it, pick number 189, not 289, because there's only 259 picks in the draft. 6th round pick, defensive end O'Shawn Mathis. So back to the defensive line, added more depth there, considering we lost Greg Gaines, Sean Robinson. But this guy, I think I can play edge as well, from what I believe. Andy, happy to add more depth there with guys that we've lost?
Yeah, happy to add, again, depth, a guy that, certainly I think can come in day one straight onto, special teams, and potentially can push, maybe not so much for a starting spot, I'd be surprised, but, maybe on the rotation, and a decent guy that's to come in for injuries and stuff. If we do pick up injuries, he'll maybe just one of those guys that can come in a couple of downs in a game just to rest players like Aaron Donald, or maybe on run packages, because he is a very good run defender. So And again, you know, you've got Aaron Donald alongside you to learn off a little bit to maybe help develop the pass rush moves. So, but you know, you come into sort of the 6th round now. A lot of these players, you know, you are kind of hit and miss. You know, how many have we seen that don't make the team because, you know, even out of camp? But I do think he has the potential to stick around and, let's say, special teams and maybe on the rotation a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, just as you said, like not really don't have much to add, but this is one of the picks that I was kind of like, oh yeah, well, good we've added more depth there, but I was kind of starting to kind of think in my head, right, well, special teams we could be doing, can maybe starting to look at a punter or kicker, you know, with Jake Moody and whatnot, you know. So my mind was kind of elsewhere about the picks, but you know, over the whole, looking at his highlights, guy seems like a decent addition for us there. Just got in there. Cousin Vinny says that just when you're saying about the veterans, he wouldn't rule out bringing back Troy Hill, who's available to be a veteran. And we haven't signed obviously any veterans at this point, but I mean that could be a good shout.
Yeah, I do think, you know, like I said, I do think there is still one or two that we maybe will bring in. I think we do have to, especially in the secondary. And yeah, Troy Hill is one of them. I could see us potentially bringing back if he wants to come back on a 1-year deal, you know, just to sort of, you know, add depth and potentially be a starter if we need it.
Yep. So from there, we were still in the 6th round, our final 6th round pick. We went finally, I guess, for us, we went to the backfield with the 215th pick. We went with running back Zach Evans. Now, this is a guy that a lot of people were saying he's failed really far in the draft. He could have went a lot earlier. This could be a steal for the Rams. Andy, what say you? Zach Evans joining the likes of Cam Akers, Kyren Williams, the Rocket Ronnie Rivers. Is this a good addition for us?
Yeah, I do think this was a good addition for us. And honestly, I can see him being running back 2 for us by sort of start of the season. I really do like his talent. I think he adds a little bit something different to the room. He adds a little bit more speed and a bit more dynamism than I think we've seen. And like I say, I would not be surprised if he is actually running back 2 coming into the season. I do like the guy. You know, and I do think as well, if I remember correctly, he also has kick returner ability as well. So, you know, potentially it's another guy who can be back there for, you know, punts and kicks, and maybe bring a bit of dynamism to the room. But yeah, he's definitely, and I'm happy to see that, you know, he wasn't one that we've reached on and gone for in the 3rd, 4th round. We've sort of sat, waited, and gone, right, okay. It almost felt like for us, it was a case of, right, we maybe had 4 or 5 guys who were thinking, yeah, if they're in the 6th round, we'll take one of them, you know, and that's exactly what we've done. I think we've probably taken the best one out of them all, to be honest.
Yep. Look, going on his highlights, the guy looks like he can break a tackle well. He can, you know, dodge, duck and dive, I guess. And it's one of those ones with the way our offensive line was last year. You know, I mean, they did. I guess they did the best they could, but with how hard it was for us to establish a running game, and if we, you know, and maintain it, to me, he looks like a player who could give us a bit of edge in the running game. And I know what you're saying about running back 2, but you know, if Cam Akers, you know, doesn't, you know, get a grip of himself, this is a guy who could potentially be challenging him for that number 1 spot. Especially with Akers, you know, I think he's coming up. If I'm right, he's coming up for a contract year.
Yeah, I think it's his contract year.
Yeah, so Akers really needs to we all have to keep close tabs on this guy. But it looks like he's got a decent bit of speed on him. Like I said, I like from what I've seen of him. I like seeing him actually break out of tackles, break through gaps. And as we talked about, like Avia and McClendon on the offensive line, like I said about how strong they looked and their ability to kind of like basically brush off guys and hold up guys, it could create the gaps for, you know, players like Evans to basically explode through that offensive line. So this is one guy, just like I said about McClendon, feels like we've taken him higher than he actually is, and that's how I'd say that he feels like he's more of a steal. And we this was one of the picks. This was the pick we got from the Bills trade, just to point out earlier on.
Well, one thing I will say about Evans as well is he seems to have a good set of hands for catching out the backfield as well, which is obviously going to be another option for our passing game as well. You know, he can, you know, pick it up. whether or not the big thing with running backs, and this is something I think, especially in our scheme, we're dependent on, is it's going to depend on how well he can block. Because
Yeah.
we do traditionally like our running backs to be able to block. And that has been one bit of a knock on Cam
Yeah.
Akers, is sometimes he can sort of go missing in that department.
But
So
that's
if-
because Akers is a running back. He wants to run with the ball, whereas McVay doesn't want running backs. He wants, as you said, blockers is what he wants.
Yeah.
He wants guys that won't run with the ball because he doesn't play with a running game. He doesn't have a run system. He has run blockers, like
Yeah.
to protect the pocket.
But I do feel, if the guy, like I say, I think, I don't know. I just have this feeling that I don't think the Rams are sold on Williams. I just
No.
have this feeling that they're not sold on the guy, and I can
Uh-huh.
see that Williams certainly can be replaceable, and to be honest, could potentially even be a cut candidate if we, come into the 53. Depending on how well the
Yeah.
other guys do,
Well,
because for me, it's not just him; it's the fact we've picked up a few others in UDFAs,
yeah.
which we don't traditionally tend to do, which makes me think that they're not happy with. Maybe not necessarily the running back one. I do think that is Cam Akers still to lose. I think McVay
Yes.
and Akers have got their heads together and sort of found the balance. They've got the balance and the zen with each other, but I do feel that they're not comfortable with running back two, and they may want something a bit more. And Zach Evans as well. He's a bit more of a bigger guy. He's a bit more of a bruiser. It may be that goal line where you need that. It's kind of like a Malcolm Brown, Sony Michel player, when you just want that 1-2 yards instead of having to sneak Stafford, which is putting him in that injury risk of the QB sneak. It's a case of, well, okay, we won't bother doing that. We've got a guy who can just pound it for that 2 yards because he's got that strength to just get that 2 yards on his own legs.
Cam Akers isn't that type of running
No,
back. And we
Cam
saw that
Akers-
last year when he fumbled
Yeah.
the ball on the goal line.
Yeah, Cam Akers is that shifty, needs the space sort of running back. Whereas Evans, although he has those capabilities, he also has that power to just basically hit that linebacker or hit that defensive lineman and just drive him that 2 yards to get the first down or the touchdown.
So we moved into the 7th round pick with pick number 223. And we then went to the special teams to take punter Ethan Evans. So we didn't, obviously, the team didn't have a punter or a kicker. One thing I'm going to say off the back of this, just before you jump in, Andy, is I know people went on last year about punt god. I think people are sleeping on this guy. And I'm really happy with taking this guy as a punter.
Yeah, I am. I'm really happy that we've took this guy. Looking at his tape, and it's not just everyone's looking at that 80-yard kick and like, oh my god, he can kick it 80 yards and everything else. He's good at the kickoff as well. Not just punting, he's a good kickoff guy. He's also it's his hang time. So when you're in that punting where you're kind of in that zone of do we go for the field goal or do we just punt it? How many times have we seen punters they either under kick it or over kick it, and whereas this guy seems to be able to short kicks and have them hang for a very, very long time, which then gives the rest of your special teams, your gunners, the time to get up so that basically they're on the tackler before he's even caught the ball. They're basically sitting there waiting for him, going, yeah, you catch and I'm touching you. And that's when players are going to go, yeah, I'll just call a fair catch at the 5-yard line because, I don't want to get lit the heck up by this guy who's steaming in at my face. So I do think the guy coming in is, good. And, don't get me wrong, I did like I've said previously, I liked Riley Dixon last year, but, this is a guy now that potentially, we know punters and kickers can struggle for the first year or so. We've seen it time and time again, and then they get it together, But again, this year for me is a learning year for a lot of these guys. And I think come year 2, when maybe we're going to be hoping to be more competitive, this guy's going to be ready to go. And, I think it's a good addition to the team. And he's on a 4-year rookie contract, so it's not going to cost an arm and a leg like picking up a veteran would do.
Yep. For me, like, when I watched this guy's highlights, the hang time was the distance that he can kick the ball for starters is phenomenal. The guy I reckon he could potentially punt it from his own end zone to the other end zone. he potentially could. I think there was some once he got about the best part 8 yards. His average is 48 yards, just shy of 48 yards, which is pretty good. But like you'd said before we came on, we talked about him. I think he in his tapes he was trying to. He said that he was trying to aim for 6 seconds. If you count 6 seconds, you think about that on a football field, that's a hell of a long time for the ball to be in the air. And one thing I picked up from his highlights, he's got his own YouTube channel with his own highlights. By the way, he made his own highlights tape, which I thought was amazing. The guy was at Division 2 school, and when I thought I was watching high school tape at first, just looking at the stadium. I believe he's the 3rd person from Wingate University that's ever been drafted. So he comes from a university that doesn't tend to have guys play in the NFL. So it's a bit of an achievement for them. But like, one thing I did pick up was with that hang time and the distance, the guy who's in the backfield, sorry, the guy who's set to receive the kick is having to step back and to the side. So it's not a case of he's stepping up or I've got that right, I'm round about where it's going to land. He's having to go back. Now, that having the back pedal to make the catch is allowing more time for your linebackers or whatever, your guys rushing down the field to get to him. And you'll probably find that he's the kind of punter who could really help us pin offenses back as far into their half of the field. And you'll probably see that not many of his punts will be returned if he punts as well as he's shown from his highlights in college. So
that is one thing. Obviously, players usually their highlight tapes, and what they do compared to game time is completely different because he's not got players rushing, and it's a different level of speed. And that is one thing kickers and punters had said, previously when they've come into the league, the speed at what these guys are coming at you is so much quicker than it is in college.
Yeah.
You don't have, I think they said, in college you have 5 seconds average from the ball being snapped before you've got to get it off your foot. In the NFL, you've got an average of 2.3 seconds before there's a player on top of you. So it is that, he's got to have to get quicker with certain things. But he's the sort of guy that looks like he's ready for that sort of, he can get that. And with a bit of coaching, now between now and the start of the season, he can basically pick it up and go. Like I say, he potentially is the perfect, Hecker replacement for us. He's going to come in and basically, replace him now finally. And it's, like I said, Dixon, for me, I know people, are a bit annoyed with Dixon. I thought, I wasn't happy at the beginning, but by the end of the year, I was one of them banging the drum saying we should keep, we need to re-sign the guy. And, unfortunately we got priced out or whatever, we didn't pick it up. But I think the guy we've brought in has the potential to be even better than him. And
exactly,
be a Hecker level punter for us for potentially years and years to come.
Yep, like you said, another rookie contract, 4 years. Low money. We'll take that, So, moving on, the 7th round, second to last pick for the Rams, pick number 234. We took safety Jason Taylor II. This is another guy that I've seen from his highlights. Looks like he could be a potential good addition to our secondary. Bearing in mind, we've got John Fuller, Rush East, Lake, is in there at present, so it's added depth that we need there. But he looks like a player that could, again, I guess everyone's in the same boat, have a good camp, good pre-season. Those starting positions could be yours. And I think that's where, as I said, with us only having that small roster to begin with in this draft, all these guys that are being drafted by us know I'm not coming in to make up numbers, I'm coming in to compete for that starting role, as opposed to I'm coming in for depth, I'm coming in to develop. No, I'm coming in to step up. And this is one player that potentially has that chance to do it in our secondary. What say you, Andy?
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same. He shows good ball hawking abilities. He's not afraid to put the hit in either when he has to. He's not the quickest guy in the world, but he's intelligent enough that he realizes his limitations, and very rarely gets beaten to coverage because he does put himself in good positions to, you know, come down with the ball or, you know, defend the ball, even, you know, just to get it away. And like I say, he's not afraid to stick his head in and, you know, hit again. You know, I don't want to make comparisons because obviously Nick Scott was Nick Scott, but he's another guy who's potentially coming in as that 7th round pickup that could potentially get on the starter's field, you know, and make some of those highlight players like flattening out players, you know, and taking their heads off into the middle of next month.
Listen, all he needs to do is flatten Debo Samuel, and that's him set for life.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, I do think, again, he has the potential to, as you say, push. And again, if nothing else, you know, it's another guy to stick on special teams to improve the special teams roster, you know, and like I say, you know, as we said before, you get to 6th, 7th round, these guys, you know, can go or they can stay. But I do think he's showing talent. And again, he's a leader. So, he has that capability to step in and be like, right, I'm ready to go. You know, and I want to win this job. And as you said, because these players are coming in, there's no established real stars in front of them.
Yeah.
They're going to have this chance. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if they've walked into day one of rookie camp and, you know, whoever McVay or whoever's stepped up in front of them and gone, look, this is the state of the team. You put your head down, get your backside working. You could potentially steal yourself a day one starting spot. You're not, if it's not as if, right, you're going to be fighting for a roster spot or a practice squad position. You could be fighting as a day one, you know,
Exactly.
Yeah. And that may be the, you know, the drive into some of these guys that will basically be, all right, you know what, I want that position. I want that as mine. And he does seem like the sort of player who has that, you know, mentality to basically be, yeah, I want this and I'm going to take it.
Yep. I certainly think so too. As we said, like, these guys are coming and basically they've got the chance to essentially smell blood and, you know, go for the jugular in terms of like season. Not like you said, not a roster spot, but a starting spot. That's what it seems to be. So I suppose as a rookie, the Rams, you know, I don't know what it says better teams in his right, because I don't like saying that because, you know, I'm a Rams fan. But if I was being drafted, you know, knowing the state of the Rams roster, it would be like, this is a good move for me because this is a chance for me to essentially go straight into the league as opposed to, you know, just making up numbers.
Yeah.
And that's that. And yeah, so just moving on quickly here, to wrap up before we touch on upon quickly our undrafted free agents, and then we've got you put a bit of clickbait on the Discord channel. We'll get to that as well, just so I don't forget about that. Mr. Irrelevant, number 259. He's irrelevant. He's not irrelevant to us. He's relevant. It's defensive end, Deshaun Johnson. I never actually sat and watched the whole Mr. Irrelevant pick, you know, bringing out the jersey and all that. I just thought it was just a name. Like, I didn't realise there was a foundation and all that around it. So, Andy, another guy on the defensive line. What are you making this pick? I believe this was we met with Johnson prior to the draft. I think he's one of the guys that the team had met. Happy with this move?
Yeah, you know, I'm happy with this move. And if he could turn out like the last Mr. Irrelevant, I'll be very happy with this move. But, again, you know, he's one of them guys. He can come in, compete, you know, for rotational positions on the team, you know. And again, as we said, keep saying, you know, another guy on the special teams who can help. You know, one thing I did like about this guy is, you know, he seems a very strong player for his size. He plays bigger than his size. You know, I think he came into the draft about 280 pounds, you know, but you watch his tape, he plays like a guy who's a lot bigger than that. He plays like more like the strength of a guy who's 310, 315 pounds, you know, so he's good. And he has good closing speed, you know, within the line to basically, you know, slip himself off a block and either get to the quarterback or to grab the runner. So, you know, we'll see how the guy goes between, you know, now and that. But again, you know, a guy who could potentially, you know, get a few starting snaps here and there throughout the season, you know, and develop, you know. And again, as we've previously said, a guy who, you know, if you want to develop someone beside someone, there's no better than Aaron Donald to be stood next to even just watch week in, week out and pick his brain.
That's it. Yep. So that wrapped up our draft picks. Now, as with any other team, the Rams obviously will dip into the undrafted free agent market, and we signed, I believe, no less than 26 guys. So just quickly running through the list, then we'll just quickly kind of talk a few of the guys. So we brought in quarterback Dresser Wynn, running back Tion Evans, we'll come back to him. Wide receivers Tyler Hudson, Xavier Smith, Sam James, Braxton Burmeister, tight end Christian Sims, offensive guards Sean McGinn and Grant Miller, tier offensive linemen Mike McAllister, linebackers DeAndre Square, Matthew Jester, Ryan Smenda Jr., and I'm going to get his name right because I made a point of learning his name because someone in Discord said, good luck trying to pronounce this name, guys. Kalechi Anilbeki, linebacker. I got his name right. I'm happy. I'm chuffed with that. Cornerbacks Cameron McCutcheon, Tamarcus Davis, Tion Davis, Jordan Jones. Safeties Rashad Torrens II, Colin Duncan, Quindle Johnson, Tanner Ingle, and Jaden Woodby. Kickers Christopher Dunn, Tanner Brown, and long snapper Alex Ward. A lot of guys there as undrafted free agents. Andy, couple of guys I just wanted to highlight. First of all, safety Rashad Torrens. This was a guy that apparently was a bit of surprise that he went undrafted. Are you familiar with him for starters?
I've seen him a couple of times for Florida. I did watch a couple of Florida games. And yeah, I was surprised he didn't go undrafted. But I'm kind of glad he didn't for us anyway, because I do think again he's one of them. He's going to come in the room and he's going to potentially compete for and for that starting spot. And sometimes these guys who are coming in as undrafted free agents, they've got that chip on the shoulder because they'll feel they should have been drafted and they now want to go out and prove that I should have been drafted by you. A team should have picked me up. That attitude can sometimes help. And again, he's another one of them. He's willing even in the run game to stick his nose in. So, I think he is a decent pickup for us, I must admit. And I wouldn't be surprised if not only he makes the squad, but again, he could potentially be pushing for starting or rotation reps, because we do sometimes like to play with a free safety set occasionally. So, he could maybe come in as that third safety.
Yep, I think he's definitely one that's been highlighted just to watch out on. Looks strong in the tackle. And I think he's, like you're saying, he's one of these guys that not a case of making the roster, it's a case of up there, kind of challenging special teams player or whatnot. So he's one guy that I would like to kind of try and keep an eye on personally. Another guy I want to highlight is running back Tion Evans. This and again another guy that people are saying surprised he went undrafted, but I think it's the reason I want to highlight him is because of I'm saying this now because you it didn't actually click to me as the whole they're maybe not really sold in Williams. So that's two running backs that were kind of brought in here, Zach Evans and Tion Evans. So we've got Akers there, Williams, Rivers, and now we've got two Evans, I guess.
Yeah.
So 5 running backs there. All, I mean, obviously, like they're not all going to be on the roster come the start of the season, but
no,
is this another guy that's potentially there to test the likes of Williams for a spot?
Yeah, I could potentially see him maybe pushing for that. If the team isn't sold on Williams, potentially pushing for maybe the running back free position, behind the team, on the team, and see, just sticking around. But like I've said before, running backs are, to me, is one of the least important positions on the offense. You can pick these guys up in late rounds, free agency, which I'm glad to see we've done. That we've not gone, oh look, such and such is there in the second round, we need to draft them. We've gone, all right, we'll pick them up at a later time and we'll see what happens. If one of them sticks, great. If not, we've picked up a fair few now. Throw so many darts and hope that one of them sticks. And I think that's what the team's mentality this appears to be with the running backs, is that's the mentality they're going towards. But yeah, as I say, I wouldn't be surprised if he makes the squad and potentially could even kick Williams out of the running back free position.
Yep. The last guy I wanted to highlight is an interesting one. We brought him in, wide receiver Braxton Burmeister from Virginia Tech. Now, this was a guy, he flew under the radar and didn't have him on the list of undrafted free agents. Why I'm wanting to highlight him is, if you're watching along here, folks, if you're not watching along, jump onto our YouTube channel and watch along, is the guy was a quarterback in college, but we've brought him in as a wide receiver. Now, when I was watching the highlights, I'm sitting there watching highlights going, hold on, did they change numbers? And it took for a second for me to click. It took me for a second to start thinking, I'm watching the wrong highlights. So I Googled and I checked. The guy switched from quarterback to wide receiver. Is this an interesting move when you've got the likes of, your Taysom Hills and whatnot? Or is this just like a fill the roster, or maybe it's like the scouting kind of idea, like you touched upon earlier on with Stetson Bennett?
I don't know. It does seem like a weird thing. If anything, they're looking at the guy and thinking, Tebow sort of transitioning from quarterback to tight end, or I know there was one, was it Jackson? I think it was obviously not Lamar Jackson, but another one that went from quarterback, had one season in the NFL, went to whatever it was prior to the XFL, and then came back into the NFL and is trying out now as a tight end. So, maybe the Rams are looking at that and just thinking, you know what, we'll give the guy a go wide receiver. If he sticks, great. If he doesn't, well, no loss to us. He's an undrafted free agent, so, we're not worried. Or, maybe McVay's got some sort of weird scheme up his thing where he's going to line him up as a wide receiver, hand it off to him and let him throw it and completely catch defenses out. Who knows with the mind of McVay and what weirdness he can sometimes come up with. But yeah, it's when you told me, I was like, what? But we'll see what happens, and let's hope the guy, maybe if he's decent, can stick on the squad, and maybe be a bit of a surprise. Maybe could be our Taysom Hill. I think we see in some of the highlights, he's athletic in the run game as well. So maybe, McVay's sort of looking at, we'll take a few random darts, and we'll see if anything that can come of it.
Yeah, perhaps he's just in there, like you said, for a bit of trickery or whatnot. I'm interested to see how that one develops. Any other undrafted free agents, Andy, that kind of jumped out for you as like an interesting pick?
Yeah, the only one that jumped out for me, other than them, to be honest, was Matthew Jester, who is down as a offensive or off the ball linebacker / edge player. But we're listing him now as a fullback, which is quite, because we traditionally as a team don't run fullback. We're not a team that traditionally has a fullback. So, maybe, McVay's looking at, what other teams like Baltimore have done with Patrick Ricard, who can play edge. He's a interior defensive lineman, but also plays the fullback role, or Jason Kambinda, who's gone from a linebacker to a fullback for the Detroit Lions. Maybe he's looking at the success he had last season with Benny Skose sort of playing that position, and has gone, you know what, actually, maybe occasionally we do need to run a fullback to help with the blocking and stuff. So, it'd be interesting. I'm interested to see if he makes the team and what sort of role McVay is going to have for him. Is he going to just be a fullback, or is it going to be a case of actually you be both sides of the ball, you'll be on our defense and on the offense as well, and that flexibility again as a it's certainly going to be probably nice for the special teams as a blocker on the special teams for punt kicks and chasing these guys down. So we'll see what happens with him. But it's just interesting the fact that we've brought him in as a linebacker, and then literally a few days later turned around and went, actually he's going to play fullback.
Perhaps when he was at college, he was one. A lot of guys play multiple positions or play both sides of the ball. Perhaps it's one of those ones that he did. Maybe that's the role he did. Maybe when he was being scouted, they saw him play that kind of role and thought maybe that's where we could use him. Like you said, we had Benny Skose in there, so maybe it's trying to add players, into provide that kind of blocking. Like you said, like Cam Akers isn't, he can't really block. Let's be honest here. So they've maybe seen that Jester could potentially fill that kind of role, and maybe that's why they, brought him in, to add not really depth, but add an option in terms of fullback. If we've got guys like you said about Zach Evans, that he's shown signs of he could grind those 1 or 2 yards. Got a fullback in there to provide extra blockage, blocking for him. It could help, I guess. So maybe it's when we've scouted him, we've seen that element to his game, as opposed to it being a random. No, I'm going to play offense now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm looking at yeah, no, he's from his. I'm literally looking at his Princeton page now from college. He's never played fullback at all. He's literally he's always been a linebacker.
That makes it even more interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, So, but again, another one accolades. He's first team All Ivy, and he's 2022 team captain. So again, it's sort of there's a theme for how the Rams are sort of with their draft, but it's good. Like I say, it's going to be interesting to see, does he make the squad, and what McVay's role for the guy is going to be, on our offense, and we're going to potentially have a bit different on the offense this year,
Well, in terms of talking about the offense here, that moves us nicely on. So anyone who's on our Discord server will have seen Andy put a bit of clickbait about the team going forward. So Andy, we've waited since I think it was Thursday. In fact, about Thursday it was when you put it on. So Andy, what's your plans for the team in 2023? What was this clickbait all about?
Right. It's not my plan for the team. It's how I see the team going in 2023.
Okay.
I think the Rams, looking at their draft and looking at what they've done this year, is they're either, if we're coming to week 6, week 7, and we've got a winning record, I can see the Rams using our first round pick to maybe go and pick up a bit of talent to add on to the team to make a push for the playoffs. Because if we're going to have a winning record, we're not going to have a high enough pick for the likes of a Caleb Williams or a Drake May. Yep. So they'll think, you know what? If Stafford's looking healthy, Stafford looks like he could go for another couple of years. We'll kick that can down the road. We'll take a first round pick, and we're going to go and, put it into there's talent out there, There's a few players this year, Chase Young, etc., who've not had their fifth year options picked up. So, if we're sitting halfway, week 7, and we're, 5-2, 4-3, the team may think, you know what, we can still make a push for the playoffs. We're going to go for it. But if we're at week 6, week 7, and we've got a losing record, like we're 2-5 or something like that, I can see the team basically trading everything away that we've got to get more picks for next year. I can see that being also in the team's plans, that basically we'll say, you know what, let's just tear this lot down, get as many draft picks as we can. So even if we're not the number 1, 2, or 3 team, we've got the draft picks to be able to trade up to those positions to grab the quarterback we want next year. And I can see them basically tearing the whole lot down and going for a complete and utter rebuild. That means even trading away the likes of Cup, Stafford, Donald, everything. They'll just turn around and tear the lot down and basically say, right, we're hitting reset. We're not going to have a winning record, so we may as well just tear it down now and get as much draft capital as we can to get this thing going as fast as we can. I just see that, to me, with how the draft went and the feel of the team, it feels like that's going to be our play. It's either we're winning, so let's just go back in and see if we can do this again, maybe hit the playoffs, because we're not going to get the player that we want next year, or it's a case of, we're losing, right, we may as well just tear it down, make sure we have that losing tank season where we're getting the top 3 pick, and you know what, we'll just rebuild from next year, because we've got the draft capital even next year to take the cap hits that would be associated with these players.
Yep. In terms, so this is a difficult one for me to add in. My feelings on what you've just said, right? And the reason is because the schedule's dropping tomorrow. So we'll be back next week, folks, to actually talk about the schedule as a whole. So, I mean, this will be a good point to, we'll revisit this one next week, but just because we'll be able to kind of take your week 7 week, we'll be able to see when the bye week is, as well. That we'll get an idea of what the strength of our schedule is like. I know it's supposed to be quite bad as it is, in terms of what we think it could look like, to then you said about are we tanking, or are we going to trade a first round pick to bring in some talent or whatnot? So I don't think, but I think at this moment in time we're not setting up to tank. Let's be real here. We're not. We've added in some decent talent from this draft. I think try and push for the playoffs. And it's not about winning anything. I think it's about let's just get this team to a state where we're in the postseason. Right, we're building that now to compete in the postseason. Right, we're building that to go to the Super Bowl. I think that's the free stage, kind of like in terms of progress we're looking for. And you're absolutely right in what you're saying, how this could go. If we're absolutely tanking it because we just can't buy a win, in the first 6 weeks of the season, then it's one of those ones, like you said, that decisions would get made, I guess, to unfortunately make the tough decisions to get rid of whatever talent we can get rid of to acquire as high draft picks as we could. I think the problem is, as we've seen this off season, is you mean you could let's take Cup for example. Try to trade him away thinking we'll get a couple of first round picks on him. We end up with no first round picks when we end up with 2-2s or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And I know what you're saying. It's maybe about amassing picks, whatnot. But it's like, well, would it have been better? Would it have been better to keep a hold of them? But I think, like I said, maybe it's best. This is one that when we can look at the full schedule, we could probably go a bit longer in terms of that. But what you're saying about the first round pick, I'm glad you highlighted him, because I've been sitting for the last hour thinking, who's the guy that is younger than guys we've drafted this year that I would love to take? And it's Chase Young. Chase Young is, I think, he's only just about to turn 25, and we're drafting rookies that are already 25. Yeah. Chase Young, if we've got the chance to make a play for somebody like Chase Young next off season, get the checkbook home. You know what I mean? Like, if we need, we need to throw picks or whatever to even get him, as part of a trade mid-season, go for it. He's a great talent. I think it's a case of Washington taking the option up, because I don't think they're going to be able to afford to pay him, basically, in terms of the cap hit or whatnot. But
no, I think it's more the fact because he's had so much time out injured, that just looking now and basically saying, is this guy worth it? And, he was coming into the league as, he was supposed to be this next big thing, and he's not really. He's had decent seasons, but he's not been, I think, the explosive player that everybody thought he was going to be. He's expected to be.
No.
Yeah, obviously it's Washington, but, people were expecting him to be, the next TJ Watt or Aaron, next Myles Garrett, someone like that, and it's just not worked out. Obviously, like I say, he has spent a lot of time. He doesn't seem to be able to stay healthy very much, and that would be the one thing knock for me would be, do you really want to trade for a guy who's not going to last a season, potentially just can't last a season? But
we could use that to our advantage and say, well, we're not going to pay you what you're looking for because of your injury history. So here's a prove it deal. And here's a chance for you to learn alongside Aaron Donald. Here's a chance for you to step up and take his role when he hangs his boots up. And for me, Young he's got the reason that I would like to make a play for him at some point in the next 12 months is because regardless of injury status, the potential's there. It's a case if he can stay healthy, this guy could be a great player. And that's purely why I'm saying, like, if we can get him, make a play, get him in, keep him healthy, develop him, get him. The longer he could be alongside and learning from Aaron Donald, the better it'd be for him, and then the better for us in the long term, because the age he's at, we could get a good amount of years out of him.
Yeah, no, exactly. I kind of do agree with you. If he has the potential there to, potentially be, that player, or maybe, as you say, with not having that focus of him being the number one, everyone's double teaming him, that with Aaron Donald, he could maybe develop that a little bit more. But, yeah, I know you say, but if you look, you've got, I think week 8 is the closing line for the trade deadline. If a team's, making that playoff push and an Aaron Donald or a Cooper Kupp become available, and they, they've got a chance, maybe someone, hypothetically, the Tenants, the LA Chargers, would they, a team like that could be potentially willing to give up that first round pick because they're desperate at that point. They want that talent in because they want to make that push for the playoffs.
Yeah,
they that's when teams, I find, get more desperate and are more likely to give you those higher draft picks because they're desperate because they want the potential player that's going to take them from a playoff team to a potential Super Bowl team. Someone like the New York Giants or the Jets, for example. If Cooper Kupp became available, would Aaron Rodgers be like, I don't want him, or would he be in their front office's ear going, I want this guy and I want this guy now. I don't care what you have to pay to get him. Pick him up. This is the thing. Sometimes it is easier to trade players mid-season.
Yep. I suppose with the off season, you've got the time for it to basically. Well, look at how long it took for Rodgers to go to New York.
Yeah.
As soon as the season was done, that was getting talked about. But it was only in the last week that it actually, was properly finalised. So whereas, with the pressures of the trade deadline, if you can get those kind of deals over the line, then the ball's in really like the team that wants them to essentially pay up. Whereas I think in the off season, it's kind of it's against the team trying to push the trades than to we saw it with Ramsey basically. We wanted to trade Ramsey. All it takes is to go, well, it's not like if the Ramsey thing happened during the season, Ramsey wasn't going to exactly turn and say, well, if you don't trade me to Miami, I'm going to sit in the bench. He's not going to do that during the season.
No, it'd be highly unlikely.
Yep, but in the off season, he says, "Well, I'll not. I'll hold out. I'm not coming back." So he's the power's more in his hands as opposed to our hands. Which, like as you're saying, it's probably for a team for their benefit. It's better to do the trade during the season because you've got more of the power to get what you actually want out of the trade. Be that the player you're trading for or the picks or whatever it is you're trading. As part of, but.
Well, that my feel.
Yeah, as I said, what we'll do, Andy, is we'll revisit this next week when we've got the full schedule and we can see how the 2023 season is going to look for us in terms of who we've got and when that trade deadline's kind of going to fall, who we've got up to that point, or if we've been on a bye week or whatever. We'll revisit this next week. But for now, folks, that does it. Sorry we went quite long in this one, but blame the Rams for making the trades and making more picks than we had planned and making. Blame them for having a sensible draft. Blame them for not making stupid picks in the second round. Blame them for getting some of those picks, if not all of them, right. Blame them for making, for the most part of us, quite happy with how the 2023 draft went. Yeah. But for now, Andy, absolute pleasure, mate, talking to you. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, like you said, mate, I think, overall this draft was a sensible, good draft by, and this has put a little bit of confidence back in Les Snead now and the front office staff that, know what, maybe they're the right people for, maybe going forward, if we do get in that rebuild, we're in that we're not officially calling it the rebuild phase, but it basically is, that these guys are still the right people to lead the team forward in that phase of the team's adjustments, and maybe to get us back in a quicker than we expect Super Bowl window again.
Yep. In Les we trust. Let's just say that. But as I said, Andy, absolute pleasure talking to you as always, mate. For everyone who's listening or has been watching along YouTube, if you are listening to this episode, please go over to our YouTube channel at LA Rams UK, because during the course of this episode, the highlights that we've been referring to, you would have seen them on screen. We're hoping to be doing this more going forward, that we'll have more stuff on screen to make it more attractive for you to watch as well as listen. So please head over to YouTube at LA Rams UK. Watch us as well. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a share, give us a comment, give us everything you've got. And that about does it. So we will see you next week, guys, for episode 95. Save the date, because we will talk the 2023 regular season as well as the international series. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care, and we'll see you soon.